Betrayal by his own command cast Peacekeeper Captain Roric Vance into the fugitive's shadow, a path converging with Kaelith, an alien whose impending, painful transformation hinted at a power coveted by the warmongering Kryll. The cold, indifferent stars watched as Roric's modified patrol cutter, the Nomad's Respite, limped through the void, its hull scarred by recent, unwelcome attention from those he once called allies. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of ozone from damaged conduits and the stale tang of recycled air, a constant reminder of his fall from grace. He was a ghost in his own life, haunted by the faces of his former crew, their confusion and fear as Hyperspace Lane Authority Patrol ships, his own authority, had opened fire on him without warning, without explanation. Now, he was just another piece of debris in the forgotten lanes, a man running on dwindling fuel, and even more rapidly diminishing hope. His melancholic gaze swept over the main console, alerts blinking like angry red eyes. Proximity alarms shrieked. Not H-Lap this time, something else. A derelict. Or so it seemed. It was a Silosian freighter, old and battered, drifting aimlessly in a debris field that was once a small mining outpost, likely picked clean by scavengers or shattered by some forgotten conflict. But one life sign pulsed weakly from within, a beacon in the vast emptiness. His peacekeeper instincts, though tarnished and betrayed, flickered. He couldn't just leave it. Couldn't leave her. The airlock hissed open with a reluctant groan, and Roric stepped onto the deck of the Xylosian ship, his pulse rifle held ready, its worn stock cool against his cheek. The internal lights were dead, emergency beacons casting long, dancing shadows that read like living things. The silence was heavy, broken only by the creak of stressed metal and his own measured breathing. He found her in the ship's small medbay, or what was left of it. She was strapped to a tilted diagnostic couch, restraints that looked more like instruments of torture than medical aids. Alien, undeniably so. Her skin was a pale, iridescent lavender, smooth and almost translucent in places, hinting at the complex network of bioluminescent pathways beneath. Delicate, fin-like membranes flared from her temples and forearms, currently limp and dull. Her form was humanoid but slender, with long limbs and fingers that ended in subtly pointed tips. Kaelith. The name was a whisper in his mind, a fragment of a garbled distress call he'd barely intercepted. She was unconscious, or perhaps in some kind of stasis. A faint, rhythmic thrumming emanated from her, a deep, resonant pulse that vibrated through the deck plating. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering over her forehead. As his fingers brushed a stray lock of silvery hair from her face, her eyes snapped open. They were large, entirely black, and seemed to absorb the minimal light, reflecting nothing. And then he felt it, a searing, numbing cold that shot up his arm, locking his muscles, stealing his breath. He stumbled back, his arm useless, his mind reeling as the blackness in her eyes seemed to expand to swallow him. Her lips, a shade darker than her skin, parted, and a single, sibilant word escaped, a sound like dry leaves skittering across ice, a language he didn't understand but felt in his bones. The paralysis was temporary, thankfully, but the encounter left Roric shaken. His arm throbbed with a residual chill, a phantom numbness. He watched Kaelith from a safer distance, his initial protective instinct now warring with a primal fear. She remained still, her dark eyes fixed on him, unblinking. There was no malice in her gaze, he thought, but an unnerving stillness, an alien watchfulness. He tried speaking, his voice hoarse. "I picked up your distress signal. Are you okay?" She didn't respond, not in words. Instead, a low hum started to build around her again, the air growing thick, charged. Tiny sparks, like static discharge, danced along the edges of her fin like membranes. He noticed then the subtle shifts in the air around her, the way light seemed to bend slightly, as if reality itself was thinner in her presence. The ship's computer, what little of it was still functioning, began to flicker erratically. He recognized the signs of a Class 4-dimensional instability, usually associated with experimental hyperdrives or, more ominously, Nexus events, points where realities brushed too close. This was far beyond anything he was equipped to handle. His internal comm crackled. Nomad's Respite to Captain Vance. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple warp signatures. Designations match Hyperspace Lane Authority Patrol. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Not enough time to get answers, barely enough time to run. He looked back at Kaelith. Leaving her was not an option the remnants of his conscience would allow, especially if the H-Lap was after her too. He made a decision, the kind that had always defined him, the kind that had led him here. All right, he said more to himself than to her. Looks like we're leaving together. Hope you don't mind a bit of a bumpy ride. He moved cautiously, deactivating the restraints. Her skin felt cool, almost cold to the touch, but the paralyzing effect didn't return. As he unbuckled the last strap, her hand, slender and surprisingly strong, closed around his wrist, not with venom this time but with a distinct pressure. Her black eyes bored into his. Then, a voice, clear and precise, echoed not in the air, but directly in his mind. They will not have me. They will not have what I am becoming. Her mental voice was calm, almost melodic, a stark contrast to the single, harsh words she'd spoken earlier. It sent a shiver down his spine, a mix of awe and trepidation. This was no ordinary fugitive. The thrumming around her intensified, and a faint, silvery light began to emanate from the pathways beneath her skin. This wasn't just a biological feature, it was power. And it was growing. The escape was a blur of evasive maneuvers and desperate FTL jumps. The Etchlap ships were relentless, their pursuit driven by an urgency that Roric found disturbing. They weren't just trying to apprehend a rogue peacekeeper. They were hunting Kaelith with a ferocity that spoke of higher, more secretive orders. Aboard the Nomad's Respite, the tension was a palpable entity. Kaelith remained mostly silent, observing him with those unnervingly deep eyes. She'd taken to a corner of the small common area, curled up, the silvery light under her skin pulsing faintly. He tried to get more information from her, but her telepathic responses were cryptic, often just feelings or images, flashes of strange constellations, swirling nebulae, and a pervasive sense of being sought, not just by the H-Lap, but by something far older, far more dangerous. He learned through these fragmented impressions that her people, the Kylar, were highly communal. Individual desires were almost non-existent, subsumed by the needs of the Great Weave, their collective consciousness. Kaelith was an anomaly, her emerging abilities setting her apart, making her a target even among her own kind, who feared what they couldn't understand or integrate. Her truth-seer ability became apparent when he tried to downplay the danger they were in. A faint, dissonant chime echoed in his mind, and she simply stated, "Your words carry a shadow. The truth is sharper." He found he couldn't lie to her, not even by omission. It was unsettling, yet oddly freeing. His melancholic nature, born from years of witnessing the galaxy's casual cruelty, and now sharpened by betrayal, found a strange resonance with her quiet, observing presence. He felt a duty to protect her, an instinct that overrode his own desperate need for self-preservation. This instinct was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. Days blurred into a tense routine of running, hiding and scavenging for supplies on desolate asteroid outposts or forgotten fringe worlds. The H-Lepe were always a few steps behind, their net tightening. It was during a brief respite, hidden in the turbulent gas clouds of the Sepian Nebula, that Kaelith's transformation truly began. It started with a tremor, a violent shudder that ran through her slender frame. The silvery light beneath her skin flared, no longer a gentle pulse, but a raging inferno. She cried out, a sound that was both physical and mental, a wave of pure agony that washed over Roric, bringing him to his knees. He rushed to her side, his protective instinct screaming. Her skin was hot to the touch, feverish. The fin-like membranes on her temples and arms stiffened, then began to extend, unfurling like delicate, razor-sharp wings of light. Veins of what looked like molten silver pulsed erratically across her skin. She thrashed, her body arching, the mental shriek intensifying. It tears the veil thins. Her thoughts were fragmented, laced with an unbearable pain. Roric didn't know what to do. There were no medical facilities on the Nomad's Respite equipped for anything like this. All he could offer was his presence, his voice, a steadying hand when she would allow it. He remembered the paralyzing touch, but fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. He spoke to her softly, continuously, recounting old peacekeeper stories, childhood memories, anything to anchor her, to let her know she wasn't alone. The ship's systems flickered and died around them, overwhelmed by the sheer energy Kaelith was emitting. They were adrift, powerless, in the heart of a nebula, while she was consumed by a process that looked agonizingly like self-destruction. Hours passed. Or perhaps it was minutes. Time lost meaning in the crucible of her pain. Her physical form seemed to shimmer, to lose cohesion, as if she were phasing between states of being. He saw glimpses, just for a microsecond, of other places, other skies, reflected in her distorting silhouette. The Nexus point. She wasn't just transforming, she was becoming a gateway. And it was ripping her apart. He stayed by her side, wiping the luminescent sweat from her brow, murmuring assurances he didn't feel. He held her hand when the pain became too much, bracing for the venom, but it never came. Instead, her grip was like iron, her strength inhuman. There were moments he thought he'd lose her, moments when the light threatened to consume her entirely, leaving nothing behind. But each time, she fought back, a primal resilience shining through the agony. And through it all Roric stayed. The melancholic captain, betrayed and alone, found a purpose in that tiny, failing ship, protecting this extraordinary being from the storm within and the hunters without. When the worst of it finally subsided, Kaelith lay limp in his arms, her breathing shallow, the intense light receding to a softer, more stable glow. The membranes on her temples and arms were now larger, more defined, edged with a pearlescent sheen. Her eyes, when she finally opened them, were no longer pure black. They now held swirling nebulae of silver and violet, galaxies contained within her gaze. She was different, changed. Exhausted, Roric slumped against the bulkhead, Kaelith resting beside him, still too weak to move. The ship was cold, its systems slowly rebooting on emergency power. You stayed? Her mental voice was faint, laced with a new emotion he couldn't quite place. Surprise, gratitude. You did not flee. Where would I go? He managed, his voice raspy. Besides, looked like you needed a hand. A faint smile touched her lips, the first he had ever seen. It was a fragile, beautiful thing. My people, they would have contained me. Or ended it. The needs of the weave supersede the individual. I'm not your people, Roric said softly. And I don't much care for collectives that forget what they're made of. The forced proximity and shared ordeal had forged a bond between them, fragile yet undeniable. The etchlap was still out there, but now another, more sinister threat began to make its presence known. During Kaelith's transformation, as reality had thinned around her, she had seen them. The Kryll Hegemony. Warriors, conquerors, their societal structure built on perpetual conflict. And they were aware of her. They knew what a nexus point could mean. They too were hunting her, but not to understand or integrate. They sought to control or destroy, to prevent anyone else from wielding the power she represented. Her transformation had been a beacon, and the Kryll were drawn to it like moths to a catastrophic flame. Cooperation was no longer a choice, it was the only path to survival. The weeks that followed were a desperate dance across the uncharted territories of the Outer Rim. With Kaelith's newly stabilized but profoundly altered abilities, they managed to stay one step ahead of both the HLAP and the increasingly aggressive Kryll Patrols. Her truth-seer ability was invaluable, allowing her to sense deception in the few contacts they made, to parse genuine offers of aid from carefully laid traps. She could feel the texture of intent, the subtle dissonances in a liar's mind. Her nexus point nature, however, was a double-edged sword. While she couldn't control it yet, she would occasionally phase, slightly, becoming momentarily intangible, or seeing glimpses of alternate pathways, possible futures, usually violent and grim. These episodes left her drained and disoriented, and Roric found himself increasingly in the role of anchor, his steady presence a balm to her fractured perceptions. His protective instincts were now fully engaged, his melancholy often pushed aside by the fierce determination to keep her safe. He taught her about human emotions, about individuality, concepts alien to her communal upbringing. He shared his past, the idealism that had led him to the Peacekeepers, the crushing weight of the betrayal that had made him a fugitive. He spoke of loss, of loyalty, of the stubborn human refusal to give up even when all hope seemed lost. Kaelith, in turn, began to open up, her mental voice losing some of its formal cadence, gaining inflections of curiosity, even warmth. She explained more about the Kylar, their fear of individuality leading to societal stagnation, a fear that had made her an outcast. She spoke of the Great Weave, not as a prison, but as a symphony she could no longer fully harmonize with, her own melody now too complex, too resonant with the echoes of other realities. It was during one of these quiet moments, huddled in the cramped cockpit of the Nomad's Respite, as they navigated a dense asteroid field to mask their energy signature, that she first touched him voluntarily with her changed hand. The skin still pulsed with a soft, internal light, the pointed fingers delicate. He flinched, expecting the cold, the paralysis. Instead, he felt only a gentle warmth, a tingling sensation that was pleasant. The venom, it is different now, she projected, a hint of wonder in her tone. It responds to intent. To connection. Her silver-violet eyes met his, And for the first time, Roric saw not just an alien, not just a nexus point, but a person, vulnerable and strong, unique and precious. The air between them thickened, charged with an unspoken emotion that transcended species and circumstance. He found himself leaning closer, drawn by the galaxies in her eyes, by the quiet strength that had endured an agonizing transformation. The cultural divide was still vast. She struggled to understand his fiercely independent nature, his willingness to risk everything for one person. He, in turn, was constantly reminded of her collective conditioning when she would suggest courses of action that prioritized strategic advantage over personal safety, often her own. The weave teaches that the part serves the whole, she'd explain, her brow furrowed in concentration as she tried to reconcile her old programming with her new experiences. But what if the whole is wrong? Roric would counter. What if the most valuable parts are the ones that don't quite fit? These conversations, often challenging, chipped away at the barriers between them. He saw her intellect, her capacity for profound insight, her burgeoning sense of self. She began to see his melancholy not as a weakness, but as a sign of a deep capacity for empathy, a wound inflicted by a galaxy that often punished idealism. The Lumina Library, the core driving element of their desperate quest, became their focus. Kaelith had gleaned its existence through her Nexus, flash as the last repository of knowledge from an ascended species, the Lumina, who had understood the fabric of reality in ways no current civilization could comprehend. She believed the library held the key to understanding and controlling her abilities, perhaps even a way to counter the Kryll. The Kryll, she sensed, also knew of the library and sought it to weaponize its secrets, or to destroy it, ensuring their own brutal philosophy remained unchallenged. The library was rumored to be hidden in the Shkar Nebula, a volatile region patrolled by pirates and, increasingly, by Kryll destroyers. Reaching it would be perilous, but it was their only hope. Their pursuit of the Lumina Library led them deeper into Kryll-controlled territory. Skirmishes became more frequent, more brutal. The Kryll were relentless, their ships fast and heavily armed, their warriors fanatically devoted to conquest. During one particularly vicious encounter, the Nomads' respite suffered critical damage. They were forced to crash land on a barren moon, little more than a gravitationally bound rock, with a Kryll search party hot on their trail. Hiding in a network of volcanic lava tubes, the air thick with sulfur, Roric worked frantically to repair the ship's essential systems while Kaelith kept watch, her senses heightened, her body thrumming with a nervous energy. The Kryll were close. She could feel their predatory thoughts, their cold, calculating desire for destruction. Their sector sweeping, she whispered, her mental voice tight with anxiety. They will find the ship's heat signature soon, even with the dampers. Roric grunted, his hands slick with grease and sweat as he rerouted power conduits. Just need a little more time to get the port engine back online. Then we can try a low-orbit burst. There is no time. Kaelith stated, her silver-violet eyes fixed on a point beyond the cave wall. They are above us. Before Roric could react, the ground shuddered. Dust and rock rained down from the ceiling of the lava tube. A section of the tunnel collapsed, sealing their exit. They were trapped. Kryll warriors, clad in jagged, black armor that seemed to absorb the dim light, emerged from the dust, their energy weapons glowing menacingly. There were at least a dozen of them, their movements efficient, brutal. Roric shoved Kaelith behind him, his pulse rifle spitting coherent light. He took down 2 Kryll in the initial exchange, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. Kaelith pressed against his back, and he felt a surge of energy, not painful, but empowering. His senses sharpened, his reaction time seemed to quicken. Focus, Roric, her voice was calm, strangely resonant amidst the chaos. See their patterns. They fight as one, but their unity is their weakness. Break the links. He didn't understand how, but he felt her mind brushing against his, not invading, but guiding, highlighting the subtle shifts in the Kryll's formations, predicting their attacks. He moved with a desperate grace he didn't know he possessed, his shots finding their marks with uncanny accuracy. But the Kryll were relentless, pushing forward, their numbers overwhelming. One warrior broke through, its weapon leveled at Roric's head. There was no time to aim, no time to dodge. Suddenly Kaelith was there, a blur of lavender and silver. Her hand, glowing with an intense light, shot out and touched the Kryll's chest plate. The warrior froze mid-stride, its armor crackling with energy, then collapsed, smoke rising from its joints. It wasn't paralysis, it was a complete system overload. She swayed, the effort clearly costing her, but her eyes blazed with defiance. The remaining Kryll hesitated, momentarily confused by this unexpected display of power. Roric seized the opening, laying down suppressing fire, forcing them back. "The ship?" he yelled. "Can you do that again to clear a path?" Kaelith nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "It drains me. But yes, for you, for us." That us resonated deep within him. Together they fought their way back towards the Nomad's respite, Roric providing cover while Kaelith used her energy manipulation to disable Kryll warriors and, crucially, to overload a section of the collapsed tunnel, blasting an escape route. They scrambled aboard the damaged ship, Kryll fire searing the hull, as Roric wrestled the protesting engines to life. As they clawed their way into the moon's thin atmosphere, a Kryll cruiser appeared, blocking their path to open space. It was over. Or so it seemed. Kaelith gripped his arm, her eyes glowing fiercely. "The Nexus, I can feel it, a pathway unstable, but—" She closed her eyes, her body rigid with concentration. The ship around them began to hum, to vibrate in sympathy with the energy pouring from her. The view screen flickered, showing not the Kryll cruiser, but a swirling vortex of impossible colors. "What are you doing?" Roric yelled over the rising cacophony. "Trust me!" Her voice was a command, an appeal, a promise. With a gut-wrenching lurch, the Nomad's respite plunged into the vortex. The Kryll cruiser fired, but its energy bolts passed through the space where they had been moments before. They were elsewhere. When the violent turbulence subsided, they found themselves in an uncharted system, the stars unfamiliar, the silence deafening. Kaelith collapsed against him, utterly spent. He held her, his heart pounding, the adrenaline slowly ebbing. She had saved them using a power she barely understood, risking everything. "You were incredible," he murmured, stroking her luminescent hair. She looked up at him, her silver-violet eyes searching his. I felt you, Roric. Your fear, your determination. It guided me." In the quiet aftermath of their escape, surrounded by the silent, unknown stars, the unspoken feelings between them finally broke the surface. He cupped her face, his calloused thumb gently tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "Kaelith," he began, his voice thick with emotion. She silenced him with a touch, her fingers against his lips, warm and vibrant. Then, she leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss that tasted of stardust and ozone, of shared danger and dawning hope. Her lips were soft, yet there was an undercurrent of the immense power she wielded, a power she now controlled, a power she had used to protect him. In that moment, all barriers of species, culture, and circumstance dissolved. There was only Roric and Kaelith, two fugitives bound by an extraordinary destiny, their hearts beating in unison against the vast, indifferent canvas of space. This feeling, her mental voice was a soft whisper full of wonder. "My people have no word for it. It is singular, and it is for you. Love, Kaelith," he said, his own voice catching. "We'll call it love." And as they held each other, adrift in an unknown sector of the galaxy, they both knew their fight was far from over. The Kryll would not give up. The Lumina Library was still out there, but now, they faced the future not as two separate fugitives, but as a united force, their unexpected union forged in fire and sacrifice, their love a beacon against the encroaching darkness. Their journey to the Chakar Nebula was fraught with peril. Kryll patrols were more frequent, their tactics more sophisticated. It became clear that the Kryll Hegemony was marshalling significant forces, their interest in Kaelith and the Lumina Library escalating to an alarming degree. Kaelith's Nexus abilities, though still unpredictable, offered them fleeting advantages, glimpses of Kryll movements, sudden, short-range spatial distortions that could throw off targeting locks or allow for impossible escapes. Her truth-seer ability continued to be vital, helping them navigate the treacherous underworld of smugglers and information brokers from whom they sought charts and intelligence about the nebula and the library's rumored location. During one clandestine meeting on a lawless trading post orbiting a dying star, Kaelith's abilities exposed a Kryll informant. The ensuing firefight was brutal, forcing them to flee with incomplete data, but a renewed sense of urgency. The Kryll were not just searching. They were actively trying to prevent anyone from reaching the library. Roric found his protective instincts constantly at war with Kaelith's communal conditioning, which, though evolving, still surfaced in moments of extreme pressure. She would offer herself as a diversion, suggest sacrificing the Nomad's respite for a tactical advantage, her logic cold and clear, based on the greater good of their mission. Each time Roric would argue, fiercely, that their life together was paramount. The mission means nothing if we don't survive it, Kaelith. He'd insist, his voice raw. There is no greater good that justifies throwing yourself away. Slowly, she began to understand. Her own burgeoning love for him, a fiercely individual emotion she was still learning to navigate, started to reshape her worldview. We've taught that the self is an illusion, a temporary knot in the threads of the collective, she once mused, her hand resting in his as they watched a vibrant, alien aurora paint the viewport. But what I feel for you, Roric, it is the most real thing I have ever known. It makes me real. Their intimate moments became anchors in the storm of their lives. Her touch, once a source of fear, was now a comfort, a language of its own. The venom, or what it had become, was now a subtle energy she could channel, sometimes using it to soothe his aches after a battle, or to share a deeper, more empathic connection. It was a unique bond, born of alien biology and human emotion, a testament to their unexpected union. The information they'd pieced together suggested the Lumina Library wasn't a building or a databank, but a sentient nexus itself, a place where knowledge was alive, perhaps even a gateway to the ascended Lumina themselves. It was hidden on a planet deep within the most turbulent region of the Chakar Nebula, a world shielded by gravitational anomalies and lethal radiation fields. A world the Kryll were now blockading Infernus Prime, a volcanic death world that served as the Kryll's primary staging ground in the sector, and they suspected the fortress guarding access to the true library. The Kryll's goal became terrifyingly clear through Kaelith's intensifying Nexus visions now tinged with the dark. Aggressive thoughts of the Kryll High Command. The Kryll intended to initiate a great filter, event prematurely. They believed that by eliminating all potential rivals, all emerging civilizations that might one day challenge their dominance, they could ensure their own perpetual reign. The Lumina Library, with its profound understanding of cosmic evolution and potential for uplifting species, was a direct threat to their genocidal ambitions. And Kaelith, as a living nexus point, was the key to either unlocking the library's benevolent power or, if captured by the Kryll, twisting it into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. The stakes had escalated beyond their personal survival. The fate of countless nascent civilizations across the galaxy hung in the balance. They had to reach Infernus Prime, confront the Kryll, and secure the library, not just for themselves, but for the future of life itself. The approach to Infernus Prime was a descent into hell. The Chakar Nebula rolled around them, a chaotic maelstrom of energized gas, stellar nurseries, and black holes. Gravitational tides threatened to tear the Nomad's respite apart, while radiation spikes fried non-essential systems. Kryll destroyers and interceptors patrolled the outer edges of the system, their formations tight, their vigilance absolute. Roric piloted with a grim focus, his melancholic eyes scanning the sensor arrays, every flicker a potential death knell. Kaelith sat beside him, her own senses extended, a living early warning system. She filtered the torrent of cosmic noise, picking out the faint, rhythmic pulse that she believed was the Lumina Library, a beacon of sanity in the surrounding chaos. They are strong here, she projected, her voice tight. Their thoughts are like a storm, a chorus of hate and hunger. They guard the approaches to the volcanic world. Infernus Prime. It is their fortress. We knew this wouldn't be easy. Roric said, his knuckles white on the controls. Any idea where the library actually is, or is it inside their little hell fortress? It is beneath, shielded by the planet's own fury, and by their fortifications. The fortress is a lock, and I am, perhaps, the only key they haven't yet found or broken. Their plan was desperate, bordering on suicidal. They couldn't fight their way through the Kryll blockade. Instead, they would use Kaelith's burgeoning Nexus abilities to make a series of short, targeted spatial jumps, bypassing the main fleet elements, aiming for a geologically unstable region on Infernus Prime, far from the main fortress, hoping to find a subterranean passage to the library. It was a long shot, reliant on Kaelith's precise control over powers that still sometimes overwhelmed her. As they prepared for the first jump, Roric took her hands. Whatever happens down there, Kaelith, she smiled, a radiant knowing smile that lit up the dim cockpit. I know, Roric, and I feel it too. More than words can say in any language. The first jump was jarring, reality twisting and snapping back into place. They bypassed a Kryll destroyer, appearing dangerously close to a cluster of active volcanoes. The nomads' respite bucked and protested, alarm screaming. The second jump took them through a canyon of molten rock, Kryll atmospheric fighters screaming past their previous position. Each jump drained Kaelith, her luminescence dimming, her breath growing labored. But her eyes, those windows to swirling galaxies, burned with fierce determination. The final jump was the hardest. It was meant to take them into a vast caldera, close to a suspected lava tube entrance that, according to Kaelith's faint sense of the library, led deep underground. But as she initiated the jump, a massive Kryll dreadnought, previously hidden by a sensor distortion field, powered up its weapons, its energy signature flooding their screens. They knew. Kaelith cried out, her concentration faltering. The jump destabilized. Instead of the caldera, they were thrown wildly off course, the nomads' respite tumbling end over end, directly into the heart of the Kryll's heavily fortified main base, a jagged citadel of obsidian rock and menacing weapon emplacements built into the side of a colossal, active volcano. The crash was cataclysmic. Metal shrieked and tore as the nomads' respite plowed through the outer defenses of the Kryll fortress, finally coming to a tortured rest deep within a hangar bay, surrounded by the wreckage of Kryll fighters and stunned, then enraged Kryll warriors. The impact knocked Roric unconscious for a precious few seconds. He came to, choking on smoke and the metallic taste of blood, to the sounds of energy weapon fire and Kaelith's agonized cry. He scrambled out of the pilot's seat, his body protesting with a symphony of pain. Kaelith was already outside the wreck, a whirlwind of silver light and defensive energy, holding off a swarm of Kryll soldiers. Her fin-like membranes were fully extended, glowing with power, her hands crackling with the same energy she'd used to disable the Kryll on the moon. But there were too many. "Kaelith," he roared, grabbing his pulse rifle from its rack, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder. He joined the fight, his shots precise, covering her flanks. They fought back to back, a desperate, embattled pair against overwhelming odds, deep in the heart of the enemy's lair. The hangar bay was a scene of fiery chaos. Alarms blared. More Kryll poured in from connecting corridors. The library, it's closey, I can feel its song beneath us. But also, a powerful Kryll mind. The warlord Kaelith projected, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she repelled another wave of attackers. "We need to get down, then," Roric yelled, firing a charged shot that vaporized a Kryll heavy weapon emplacement. "Any ideas?" Before Kaelith could answer, a section of the hangar floor beneath them shuddered, then began to descend, a massive freight elevator. They hadn't activated it. They were being summoned. As the platform lowered them into the fiery bowels of Infernus Prime, the sounds of battle receded, replaced by the oppressive heat and the rhythmic thrum of colossal machinery. They found themselves in a vast, cavernous chamber, lit by rivers of molten lava that flowed in channels cut into the rock. At the center of the chamber, on a raised dais, stood a towering Kryll, larger than the others, his black armor intricately carved with symbols of conquest. His eyes, burning red, were fixed on Kaelith. This was Warlord Vrax, the architect of the Kryll's great filter ambition. The anomaly. Vrax's voice boomed, amplified by his helmet, a sound like grinding stones. "And her human pet. You have saved me the trouble of hunting you down further." Roric raised his rifle, but Vrax gestured dismissively. Force fields shimmered into existence, trapping them. "Your defiance is amusing, but ultimately futile. The Lumina Library will serve the Kryll Hegemony. Its secrets will accelerate the Great Cleansing, and you, Anomaly, will be the key to unlock it, willingly or not." Kaelith stepped forward, her chin high, her silver-violet eyes blazing. "The library will never serve those who seek only destruction. Its wisdom is for those who cherish life, not extinguish it." "Wisdom, life," Vrax chuckled, a harsh grating sound. "These are weaknesses, sentimentalities of lesser species. The universe is a crucible, and only the strong survive. We are merely accelerating the inevitable. You're a butcher, plain and simple." Roric spat, testing the force field. It hummed, unyielding. Vrax ignored him, his attention solely on Kaelith. "Your unique biology, your connection to the Nexus. The Lumina designed their library to interface with such a being. They were naive, believing their knowledge would only be used for betterment. We will show them the true application of power." He gestured, and a section of the wall behind him slid away, revealing not a machine, but a shimmering portal, a tear in reality itself, pulsing with an ancient, overwhelming energy. It was the entrance to the Lumina Library. Its song, which Kaelith had felt from afar, now flooded her senses, a symphony of infinite knowledge of cosmic understanding. But Vrax intended to pervert it. He produced a device, a cruel-looking neural interface. This will attune your mind to my will. You will open the library and I will direct its power. Kaelith recoiled, her light flaring defensively. Never. The confrontation seemed inevitable, brutal, and short. But Kaelith's connection to the library was already forming, deepening. And the library, it seemed, had a will of its own. Suddenly, the ambient energy in the chamber surged. The portal to the library pulsed erratically. Vrax looked momentarily surprised, then enraged. What is this? Are you resisting? Kaelith was as surprised as he was. The library, it is responding to me, to the conflict. The force fields around them flickered. Roric seized the opportunity, slamming his shoulder into the shimmering barrier. It gave way with a shower of sparks. He charged towards Vrax, rifle blazing. Vrax, momentarily distracted by the library's unexpected interference and Roric's sudden attack, roared in fury. He swatted Roric aside with contemptuous ease, sending him crashing into a rock wall. But the distraction was enough. Kaelith, empowered by her direct proximity to the library, and fueled by her love for Roric and her defiance of Vrax's tyranny, unleashed the full force of her Nexus abilities. It wasn't just defensive light or targeted energy blasts. Reality itself warped around her. The air crackled. Multiple faint images of Kaelith, from slightly different timelines, flickered in and out of existence. She became a storm of displaced realities, her voice, both mental and physical, echoing with the power of 1,000 possibilities. You seek to control what you cannot comprehend, Vrax. You seek to silence the symphony of creation. But the universe sings with many voices, and you are but a discordant note. Vrax, for the first time, looked uncertain, even fearful as temporal distortions rippled around him. His advanced Kryll technology, designed for straightforward warfare, struggled to cope with the multidimensional assault. Kaelith advanced, not attacking him directly, but weaving the fabric of space-time, creating localized paradoxes and disruptions that targeted his armor, his weapons, his connection to the fortress's systems. Roric, dazed but resolute, pushed himself up. He saw his chance. Vrax was disoriented, his formidable defenses compromised by Kaelith's chaotic power. Roric knew he couldn't match Vrax in strength, but he had something Vrax didn't, a partner fighting with powers beyond the Kryll's understanding. He targeted the neural interface device Vrax still clutched, the key to his plan to corrupt the library. His shots were precise, striking the device, causing it to spark and overload. Vrax roared in pain and fury as the device exploded in his grasp, his armored hand mangled. Enraged, he lunged for Kaelith, ignoring Roric. But Kaelith was no longer just a fugitive. She was a conduit for the library's will, a protector of its legacy. As Vrax reached for her, the portal to the Lumina Library behind him flared with an intense, pure white light. Tendrils of this light shot out, wrapping around Vrax, not burning, but unmaking him. The warlord of the Kryll screamed, a sound of utter disbelief and terror, as his armor, his body, even his very essence began to dissolve not into ash, but into raw information absorbed by the library itself. Within moments he was gone. Silence descended, broken only by the gentle hum of the now stable portal and Kaelith's ragged breathing as she slowly lowered her hands, the Nexus storm around her subsiding. The immediate aftermath was deceptively calm. With Vrax gone, the Kryll forces on Infernus Prime fell into disarray. Their command structure, so reliant on his singular, brutal will, fractured. Automated defenses began to power down. The oppressive psychic static of their collective aggression lifted, leaving a strange ringing silence. Roric rushed to Kaelith's side. She swayed, depleted but triumphant, the intense silver-violet light in her eyes softening. He caught her as her knees buckled. "You did it," he whispered, holding her close. "You saved everything." She leaned against him, her mental voice a faint echo. "We did it, Roric." The library it chose life. The portal to the Lumina Library pulsed invitingly. It was no longer just a tier in reality, but a gateway emanating warmth, wisdom, and an overwhelming sense of peace. They stood before it battered, exhausted, but alive. Kaelith, leaning on Roric for support, reached out a tentative hand. As her fingers brushed the edge of the portal, knowledge flowed into her, not in a painful torrent, but as a gentle, illuminating stream. She saw the Lumina, not as gods, but as explorers, philosophers, artists of reality who had ascended beyond physical form, leaving their collective understanding behind as a gift, a guide for those who would follow. They understood the patterns, Kaelith murmured, her eyes wide with wonder. The interconnectedness of all things. They knew that true strength lies not in conquest, but in harmony in understanding diversity. What now? Roric asked, awed by the sheer presence of the library. Do we go in? Kaelith looked at him, a profound sadness and a dawning hope in her gaze. The library offers much, but it also asks much. It is not a weapon, nor a simple archive. It is a responsibility. She explained that the library contained not just knowledge, but the seeds of a new philosophy, a way to foster interspecies understanding, to guide civilizations towards a more harmonious existence, to counteract the Great Filter, not by force, but by wisdom. But this knowledge couldn't be hoarded or dictated. It had to be shared, carefully with those ready to receive it. Their personal choice, their love for each other, their rejection of Vrax's nihilism, had resonated with the library's core tenets. They had, in their own small way, embodied the very principles the Lumina had cherished. The immediate task was to secure Infernus Prime, or rather, to neutralize its threat. With Kaelith's connection to the library, she was able to interface with the planet's geothermal systems and the remaining Kryll technology. Not to destroy, but to render inert. The fortress was disarmed, its volcanic energies rechanneled, its capacity for war nullified. The surviving Kryll, leaderless and confused, were contained, their future a question for a recovering galaxy to answer. And news of Vrax's defeat and the neutralization of Infernus Prime spread slowly, then with increasing speed, through the Outer Rim. The H-Lab, initially confused by the conflicting reports, eventually sent an investigative fleet. Roric, the betrayed Peacekeeper Captain, and Kaelith, the alien anomaly, found themselves in the unexpected position of diplomats. Kaelith's truth-seer ability cut through the bureaucratic obfuscation, while Roric's hard-won experience provided a grounding in galactic politics. They didn't reveal the full nature of the Lumina Library immediately. Instead, they spoke of a new understanding, a path away from endless conflict. Their relationship, so evident in their every interaction, became a symbol of this new possibility and unexpected union that had faced down the worst the galaxy could offer and emerged stronger. The galaxy was skeptical, but the fall of the Kryll Hegemony's most powerful warlord and the silencing of their main fortress spoke louder than words. A fragile hope began to dawn. A year later, the Chikar Nebula was no longer a no-go zone patrolled by Kryll destroyers. It was becoming a tentative hub of exploration and, remarkably, cooperation. The Lumina Library, its entrance now subtly shielded and its existence known only to a select few Roric and Kaelith trusted, had begun its quiet work. Small delegations from different species, carefully chosen, were invited to experience fragments of its wisdom, tailored to their developmental stage. It wasn't about giving away advanced technology, but about sharing philosophies of interconnectedness, conflict resolution, and sustainable growth. Roric and Kaelith stood on the observation deck of a newly constructed research station, Beacon Hope, orbiting near the perimeter of the nebula. The station was a joint venture, funded by several reformed planetary governments, and even a contingent of the Keelar, Kaelith's own people, who were slowly, tentatively, beginning to understand and even celebrate the unique individual their former outcast had become. Kaelith leaned her head against Roric's shoulder, her silver-violet eyes, now calm and filled with a deep serenity, watching a new ship dock a vessel carrying scholars from a species previously known for its aggressive isolationism. They are afraid, Kaelith said softly, her mental voice a gentle melody in his mind. But there is curiosity too. A flicker of hope. That's all it takes, Roric murmured, his arm around her. The melancholy that had once been his constant companion had largely receded, replaced by a quiet determination and a profound love. He was no longer a peacekeeper captain in name, but he had found a truer peace and a new purpose by her side. Their life was not without its challenges. Integrating the library's wisdom into a galaxy, scarred by millennia of conflict, was a monumental, multi-generational task. There were still factions that craved power, that resisted change. But now there was a counter-narrative, a tangible alternative to the endless cycle of war. Kaelith's Nexus abilities had stabilized. She was no longer a chaotic gateway, but a conscious bridge, able to draw upon the library's insights and her own unique perception to guide their efforts. Her paralyzing touch, the venom of her past, was now a tool of healing, of shared understanding, a symbol of controlled power used for connection. She had found her place, not within the restrictive great weave of her birth, but in the infinitely more complex, more beautiful tapestry of the wider galaxy, with Roric as her anchor, her partner, her love. Do you ever miss it? She asked, her fingers lacing with his. The nomad's respite. The running. Roric smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Sometimes I miss the simplicity. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. We fought for this, Kaelith. For this new life, for a chance at something better. He turned her to face him, cupping her luminescent face. And I found more than just a new life. I found you across the stars. She touched his cheek, her unique energy a comforting warmth. And I found myself with you. My singular, beloved Roric. Their journey had begun in betrayal and desperation, an unexpected union born of shared flight. They had faced down empires and inner demons, fought for their love and for a future that had seemed impossible. Now, as they stood together, watching the seeds of a new galactic era take root, they knew their fight had transformed into a vigil, a stewardship of hope. The stars around them shone a little brighter, reflecting the love that had not only saved them, but had also lit a path for others to follow, ensuring that new life, in all its myriad forms, might have a chance to flourish, unexpected unions continuing to blossom across the vast, wondrous expanse of the cosmos.